Hi, in this tutorial I will give an overview of Android Studio. Android Studio is the integrated development environment used to create Android applications. So in order to create Android applications, you typically need to use Android Studio and the Kotlin Programming Language. Here is a short overview of the contents of this tutorial. First, a short introduction to Android development. Then an overview of Android Studio, the device manager and the Android emulator. Then we will create a basic Hello World application where we are going to use Kotlin, which is the programming language that we are going to use. And the Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose is a framework for creating the graphical user interface in an Android app. We will see how we can turn on the developer mode on your Android device, and also see how we can show your contents of your Android device using device mirroring. So let's start with a short introduction to Android development. So Android is an operating system for smartphones. Today we have two main types of smartphones. We have Android phones and we have iPhone from Apple, and Android is created by Google, but other companies than Google can also create and use Android. So basically you find Android phones from different vendors like Samsung, Google, etc. While for the iPhone can are only created by Apple, and typically when developing an app for an iPhone, you'd also typically need to use a Mac computer. But the focus here is Android development using Android Studio and the Kotlin Programming Language. So for creating native Android apps, you will typically need to use the Android Studio from Google. And Android Studio, the integrated development environment, is optimized for Android development. And part of Android Studio and Android development, you need to use the Kotlin programming language. If you know other types of programming languages like Python, C#, etc., Kotlin has a very similar syntax. In order to create the graphical user interface in an Android app, you need to use a framework called Jetpack Compose. It's a user interface framework that is integrated in Android Studio, and you use it to actually create the graphical user interface using Kotlin code. And if you are going to distribute or make your app available for others, typically you need to deploy your app to Google Play, which is the official app platform for Android devices. For more information about Android development in general, you should go to the home page here. Just type developer.android.com, and then you will go to this web page. So here you find lots of information, resources, videos, tutorials, etc. for Android development. So it's a very good source for learning more about Android development in general. So the first thing we need to do is to install the Android Studio. So Android Studio is the integrated development environment that you need to use in order to create Android applications. So basically just go to the web page developer.android.com/studio in order to install this Android Studio software. It's free to use, and you can just download here. It's available for Windows and Mac, etc. So when you have installed Android Studio, you are ready to start creating your first Android app. So basically open the Android Studio, and then this startup window or welcome screen pops up, and here you typically just type new project or open an existing project. When you click new project, you will get a list of different templates that you can use. Typically you just start with the empty activity template, and then a basic Android app will be created for you. And then this Android Studio integrated development environment will pop up, where you have different windows. You have on the left side you have a window for folders and files, where all the folders and files for your Android app project will appear. The main file is called mainActivity.kt. KT is short for Kotlin, so this is the main code file that needs to be used in order to create your Android application. And here you see the code for this mainActivity.kt file. So this is simple basic code for a Hello World application. I will go through the details later. And then here you have a window called Preview. So when you run your application, you will get a preview of the graphical user interface here. So in this case, it just type Hello World, Hello Android to the user interface. You can also use the Android emulator to simulate a real Android device. And in this case, you see Hello Android here on top of the Android emulator. So basically, these are the windows that you need to use: the folders and files, the code window, the preview window, and the Android emulator. So it's of course recommended that you have access to a real Android device, but you don't need it to start developing Android apps, because you can use the built-in Android emulator, and then you can use the device manager to set up different types of Android emulators for different types of phones or tablets, etc. So basically you can use the Android emulator for during development and during testing. So basically the Android emulator, which you see here, is just a window that emulates or simulates a real Android device, and then you can use it during development and testing of your application. Also, when you click on these three dots in the Android emulator, you will get this extended controls window, where you have lots of features that you can use during development and testing. For instance, these virtual sensors. Here you can test and use the different sensors that are available on your Android device. And you can test all these features just using the emulator, so you don't need a real Android device during development and testing of your application. So now we are ready to start creating our first Android app. We will create a basic Hello World application. So let's open our Android Studio and create this application. So I just start by creating a folder on my hard drive here. You can create wherever you like. I have just a temporary folder and an Android folder, and inside here I will create this Hello World application. So then I just open the Android Studio, and then this welcome screen pops up. Here you get access to previous project that you have created, but we want to create a new project, so I just select new project, and then we get access to these different templates. We have templates for phone and tablets for other types of Android apps as well. Typically you just use this empty activity template, click next, and then you need to specify a name for your application, and also we need to specify the folder, and we have just created this folder. So I start by selecting the folder that I have created in my temporary folder here, Android, and select folder here. So this is the folder, and this is the name of my application. So I will just call it Hello World like this. Typically you also then want to copy this one to your folder path like this. Then the name of the application will be part of the path that where you're going to save your application. When I change this one, let's say Hello World 2, you should also select or change the location here like this. But we just give the name Hello World, and we put it in this location. Rest, the package name, the minimum SDK, build configuration, etc. Just leave it as just use the default alternatives. So then you just click finish, and then this project with the necessary folders and files will be created. Typically it takes a couple of seconds to generate all the necessary folders and files. So after a few seconds, this default application is created. Here on the left side we have this window with the different folders and files, and here you see this main activity.kt, which is the main code file which pops up here. So this is the code for a default Hello World Android application. And then if you select here split, you will also see this preview window. The first time when you create the new project, you need to select here build and refresh in order to build the application. So I just click on this one, wait a few seconds. So after a few seconds this pops up in the preview window, which is basically what is the result of this code created here in the main activity.kt, just saying hello Android. And also in addition to using the preview, you can also use the Android emulator. In order to use the Android emulator, let's start to use this device manager. So then I can start by just closing this window. I just click on here to hide it. And then here on the left side we have something called device manager. And here you see a list of available Android emulators that you can use. So this is the default emulators that is installed by default, but you can easily create your new emulators by just clicking this add new device button, create a virtual device, and then this window pops up where you can select the specific phone you want to test it for. Assuming you have a Pixel 8 phone, then you can create an Android emulator that emulates or simulates that specific hardware device. But for a start, I will just use this default emulator called medium phone, or this one. So yeah, it's in the beginning it's not so important which emulator you are using, you just use the default one. And then when I select this one, you see it also pops up here on the top. And then basically in order to run this specific application on this selected Android emulator, so I either select it here or in the drop down menu here, then I can just click on the run button in order to run and open this default code in the Android emulator. So I just click on run app, and then typically it will take a few seconds in order to open the Android emulator. And now you see we have 4 different windows. Here is the window for folders and files, here is the code window, here is the preview window, and here is the Android emulator. You can of course use them smaller like this. Also typically, especially for the Android emulator, you can also click on this button. If you click on this one, it will pops up in a separate window like this. If you want to put it back here in the main integrated environment, you can just click on this button, dock, and then it will pop up here again. So basically this is the code for the basic Hello World Android application. So let's dig into the details. You can also click here on this button, running devices, to turn either the emulator on or off like this if you want to or need more space on your screen. So now I only have the folders and files, the code editor, and the preview window like this. But if I want to have the Android emulator back, I just click on running devices like this to get this Android emulator side by side with the preview window like this. Let's dig into the code here. So basically this is auto-generated code by this template that we have chosen, this empty activity. So this piece of code is the code that needed to be created in order to run or start the Android application. Here, this is what we call a composable function This is created with this Jetpack Compose framework that I mentioned. It is used to create the user interface using Kotlin code. So here you see in the startup code, we are calling this greeting function, which is actually this function that we have created here called greeting. And this function just basically write a text to the screen like this, hello, and the name that we specified here. So then we can create, as part of the arguments in this function, we can create a name, in this case just Android, and then it will pop up hello Android here in the Android emulator. Also we have some code in the bottom here called preview. This code is used during development and testing without using the Android emulator. Basically the code we type here in the preview will only pop up here in the preview window. So assuming I type here a greeting Android pixel or something, and then just click refresh here. Sometimes we need to click refresh, other times you just need to wait a couple of seconds, and then this preview window will be updated with the new text that we have written here. So here, hello Android pixel. Take it back to Android like this, wait a few seconds, and then you see the preview will just say hello Android. But let's take it from scratch. I will now start by deleting this preview function. Then you see the preview will show nothing because we haven't created a preview function. But if we run it here in the Android emulator, it still works because this preview functionality is used to show stuff or the result in the preview window, while this piece of code runs the actual Android application and creates the graphical user interface in the Android emulator or your physical Android device. And since you have removed the preview code, we can also remove this preview window by clicking here. Instead of split, we just select code, and then the preview window will disappear. So let's dig into this default code a little bit more. We can start also by deleting this so-called composable function that is used to create the graphical user interface in an Android app. So now we have only this code left, which is this main activity, and this is a class created in the Kotlin Programming Language. It consists of different boilerplate code that just needs to be here, but we can make it a little bit simpler by just deleting some part of the code here, like this. Can also delete this part. And now, since you have also deleted this greeting function, you can just use the built-in, let's say, text instead in order to write some text to the screen. Then you can just specify like this. You can specify so this is the most basic code that we need to create in order to create an Android application. So this main activity class, which is a startup class for new for the Android application, it consists of two functions. It is called onCreate. It is needed to create the application itself. It's a built-in function that you need to use. And then you have this other function called setContent. And inside this function, you define your graphical user interface. And typically here you will use Jetpack Compose and create composable functions. And also in this case, this text is a built-in composable function that you can use to create your graphical user interface. So in this case, now I have no preview here. So I cannot use the preview window, but I just need to click refresh here to see the results here in the Android emulator. Just need a few seconds to rebuild the application, and then on top here it says Android. If I change this to Android development or something, click refresh here. Take some time to rebuild the application, and then the text will say here Android development. So this is the minimum piece of code that you need to create in order to have a working Android application. In addition, here under import, you have different import packages that you need to import in your application to make the application running. You see these gray one is not used because I have deleted some code, then I can just manually delete them, and like this. So this is now the necessary import packages that you need to have in order to run this piece of code. So let's start creating a new composable function, because this text here is just a very basic user interface. So then below here we just create a new composable function, and in Kotlin we just need to use this fun keyword in order to create a function. So then I can call it like the default one we just deleted, we can call it greeting, like this. So this is a basic function in the Kotlin programming language, but in order to make this a composable function that is used to create the graphical user interface in an Android app, we need to just use this composable to make this a so-called composable function. And then when we created this one, we needed to import this library. So then you can just select here, import this one, and then it will be imported here in the import list, like this. We can create, so instead of having this text here, we can put the text here instead. So here in the greeting composable function, we just create a text saying Android development, and then instead of text here we will just use this greeting function. So then we just type greeting here like this, and now this is the code to start the application using this onCreate, and this set content will define the graphical user interface, and here it just calls this greeting function that we have defined here, and this one just types a text to the screen called or saying Android development. So that's then you can just refresh the application or run the application, and then after a rebuild this text will pop up here. We can change it to something else, hello world Android development or something. Click refresh, and the text will be changing to hello world Android development, like this. So this is the code for creating a simple user interface in Android. So let's see how we can also use this preview window. Then we need to make this preview function. So then I just create a preview function here in the bottom. In order to create a preview function, we need to use this @preview, like this. And then we can start by just copying this code. And then, of course, we cannot have two functions with the same name. So then, since this is a preview function, we can just call it a greeting preview, like this. So that's the default standard. Composable functions, you can call them whatever you like. It need to have an uppercase as a starting. So typically use the Pascal notation for your composable functions. For your preview function, you just use the same name as here and preview. So greeting preview is a good name for a preview function like this. Also, typically we need to set the background here. You can set show background equals to true to show the background. And also, since this is a composable function, we also need to have this at composable like this. And then you see, when we have now this preview window here, it also, and then you can close the Android emulator and only using the preview window. You can change the text there, hello world. Can just delete this part, hello world, and then wait a couple of seconds, and then the text in the preview window will be updated to hello world. But you see here, so this is the preview function, calling just text and writing the text hello world. But you see here in the composable function, which is used in the application itself, have another text called hello world Android development. So when we now show the Android emulator, it shows hello world Android development, while the preview window only shows hello world. So this preview code is only working in the preview window and only used during development and testing of your code, while the code that you put here in set content will be the actual result in your Android emulator or on your physical Android device. So basically we use so-called composable functions in order to create our graphical user interface. In this simple example, we have just created one, but we can create multiple composable functions, and we can also use them several times or reuse them. So let's create a new composable function. I can just copy this code. So instead of greeting, I can call it display user interface or something. And then this composable function can use other composable functions. So let's say I want to use this greeting function inside this function. And you see this greeting here is blue, while this composable function called display user interface is gray. This means that it's never used. So let's, instead of using greeting here, we can use this display user interface here. So now when the application runs, it calls this function, which again call this greeting function that we have defined here. We can also use several greetings function here like this. When we run this application now, we will see no difference because the text will be popping. So when this one is called, it will call this text here. Yeah, if I now start by just removing this preview function and only show it in the real or in the Android emulator. So then I just need to refresh. And the text here is hello world Android development, which is this text here. But I call this function 3 times, so it should say or write the text 3 times, but it's not easy to see it because it's written on top of the previous text. So then we need to use some kind of layout in order to display. Let's say we want to have one text here, and then the next text below that, and the third text below that again. Then you typically need to use a layout called column, like this. So we use the column, which is also a built-in composable function. So we just use it like this, and then the starting tag is here, and the end tag will be here, like this. So now this column, built-in column function will just line up the results. So then when the first greeting is called, it will type the text and then create a new line, create the next text, etc. like this. But first we just need to import this here in the import libraries here on top. And now when we run the application now, after a few seconds, you see, you know how hello world Android application 3 times, since you are calling this greeting function 3 times. If we call it 6 times like this, so if you call the greeting function 6 times within the column function, click refresh, you see it will write hello world Android development 6 times like this. So I can change it to only Android development, click refresh, and then you will have the text Android development 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times like this. So now we are writing the same text 6 times, but let's say we want to have different text here. Then of course you can have create an argument here on the greeting function. You can call it name, like this. And then you can specify the data type. So in this case, name is the name of the argument, and then you just type colon, and the data type. In this case, it should be a string, like this. And then instead of hard coding the text here, we can use the name like this. And now if I just run this application now, let me see, I miss this one. Yeah, you just need to include or import this one like this. And now I can type also here in text, you just type name equals to text equals to the name, which you specify here. And then you can also here in the different greeting functions we are using here 6 times. So here I can specify different types of text. Here I can specify different names. Hans, Niels, Peter, Elvis, John, etc. like this. A new name, Hans, Niels, Peter, Elvis, Thor, like this. So now we have 6 different names here. Also need to make the parentheses correct there. So of course this needs to be inside the parentheses like this. So then the stuff inside these parentheses will be the argument of this function. In this case, the name of the argument is name and the data type is string, like this. And then we can use, in this case, the greeting function 6 times. Here we specify a different name, Hans, Niels, Peter, Elvis, John, and Thor. and then we can just refresh the application. After a few seconds, it will now call this greeting function 6 times, first with Hans, then with Nils, Peter, Elvis, John, and Thor, like this. And now they are written below each other, since we are using this column layout that is part of Jetpack Compose and the Android development environment. Instead of column, we can also use row instead. So if I refresh now, yeah, before I click refresh, I just need to import it like this, and then it will be popping up here as part of the import libraries. So just import this one. So now instead of column, we are using row, and then we just click refresh. And then you see the names popping up here: Hans, Nils, Peter, Elvis, John, Thor. So it's written in on the same line, but it's not written on top of each other, because it's first Hans, then after Hans it types Nils, Peter, Elvis, John, Thor, etc. But typically it's better to use, in this case at least, use this column instead, and then the name will be showing below each other, like this example. So basically this is how you create a basic Android application. This code is starting the application using onCreate, and it uses setContent to display what should be written or shown on the screen. And setContent in this case are calling a composable function called display user interface, which we create here. And since you know that this is a composable function by adding this @composable notation. And again, this composable function are using another composable function called greetings, which we define here. So that's the main building blocks of creating an Android application and a graphical user interface using these composable functions. And all of this is basically pure Kotlin code using this Jetpack Compose framework on top. So far we have created a basic Hello World Android application using the Android Studio, the Kotlin Programming Language, and the Jetpack Compose framework for creating the graphical user interface. And so far we have been using the preview window and the Android emulator, but we can also test it on our physical Android device. So assuming you have a physical Android device, you have 3 options. You can start using the preview window, then we can use the Android emulator, but also you can use the real physical Android device that you have, either an Android phone or an Android tablet. So in order to make that happen, we need to specify or put your Android device in so-called development mode. So in order to put your device in developer mode, you need to go into the settings menu on your physical Android device, then select about, and then select software information, and then there is a property called, or a field called build number. We need to click 7 times on that build number in order to unlock the development mode. After you have clicked this build number 7 times, a new menu will appear on your phone. It is called developer options, and it's located in the settings menu. And then when you select this developer options and select USB debugging, then you can use your physical device to test your application. So after you have put your phone in so-called developer mode and then selected this setting, USB debugging, in this developer options settings in the settings menu on your physical Android device. Then you can plug in your Android device to your computer using a USB cable. And then when you have Android Studio open and using this device manager, in addition to the Android emulators, you will also see this one, which is actually your physical Android device. In my case, I have a Samsung Android tablet, and then when I connect my Android device with my computer, when I have Android Studio open, this will pop up, and when I know next time click on Run Application, the application will be running on my physical Android device. So let's see how we can do that in Android Studio. So now we are back in Android Studio and the application we just created, and now I want to test it on my physical device. So now I just grab my physical Android device, which I have here, plug it in using a USB cable to connect it to the computer. And then now when I click here on Device Manager, you see we have these two Android emulators. In addition, this one pops up, which is actually my physical Android device, which I hold here in my hand. And now you see also here, you can select either this medium phone or the Pixel 7 Android emulators, or I can select this Samsung device, which is my physical Android device. And now when I click either Run here or refresh, I wait a few seconds, and the application that we create here will now pop up on my physical Android device. Okay, first time it will take some seconds, so it's not so easy to show, but now instead of using the Android emulator here in Android Studio, I can actually see this application on my physical Android device instead of using the Android emulator. Also, one more thing, you can also mirror your device, so it's also visible here in Android Studio. In order to do that, we can go into the settings menu in Android Studio. So then I just select the settings menu here, settings. Here you have lots of settings for your Android environment. In order to do or turn on this mirroring, we need to go to device mirroring. It should be located here under tools. Then you have device mirroring. Then by default this is turned off. So I need to select this one, activate mirroring when a new physical device is connected, like this. So just make sure to select this one and then click OK. So after a few seconds, the application pops up on my physical Android device, which I hold in my hand, but also I mirror it here in the Android Studio. So this is actually my physical Android device. So then I, instead of using the mouse and stuff here to do something with the Android application or the Android device, I can physically use the Android device I hold here in my hand. So I can click on the different menus on my physical Android device. I can start the application which you have created here. I can go to the main menu, I can go to the settings, and here I can go to this search for this developer mode. Select this one, and then you see the developer mode is on here. You also see I have USB debugging on. This means I can use my physical Android device as a test device. So when I plug in my physical Android device in my computer using a USB cable, and also turn on device mirroring in the settings menu here, like we just did. Settings, device mirroring on the tools, and turn on this one. You will also be able to actually see the physical device here in Android Studio like this. So this is a good testing feature. So now I can easily change things and do things here on my physical device, and it will be mirrored here inside the Android Studio. One more thing that you want to turn on your physical device, if you go to the settings and then search for this developer options, and then you have something here, I just need to find it. So in the developer options menu, you have an option called show tabs, which I can turn either on or off. So this means when it's on, you can actually see here in the mirroring window where I have my fingertips on the physical device. So this is a handy option that you want to turn on, and you find it in the developer options on your physical Android device like this. So I guess that's all for now. So in order to start your Android development, you need to install the Android Studio, and if you don't have a physical Android device, you can use an Android emulator. We also show how we could create a simple Hello World application using the Kotlin Programming Language and the Jetpack Compose Framework for creating a simple graphical user interface, as this Hello Android example. You can also turn on developer mode if you have a physical Android device in order to test your application on your physical device. And you can also turn on so-called device mirroring in order to mirror your physical Android device and be able to see it within the Android Studio. So that's all. So good luck and thank you.